Good morning, Christ Church. We're thrilled to have all of you with us, and we're going to get underway with our forum with Olivier Latry. We welcome everyone here. This month we've been highlighting the resurrection of Notre Dame de Paris. This morning we welcome one of the world's greatest organists. Olivier Latry, a titular organist at the Cathedral of Notre Dame, is an organist emeritus of the Montreal Symphony Orchestra, and a recently retired professor at the Paris Conservatoire, where he taught for 35 years. Olivier has performed with the world's leading orchestras in legendary halls such as the Royal Albert Hall in London, the Berlin Philharmonie, and the Musikverein in Vienna. And his acclaimed recordings are from Bach to Messiaen, include the final commercial recording on the organ in 2019 at Notre Dame de Paris before the Great Fire. As you know, Olivier will be performing tonight at 5 p.m. We've sold 300 tickets. If you still want to join us, there will be room. You can purchase them online or in person. And wine and cheese reception will follow here. Thank you so much. Please join me in welcoming Olivier Latry, whom we are so delighted and honored to have with us. Bienvenue, Olivier. Nous sommes très enchantés, très contents, très heureux que vous êtes ici. And I want to begin by just asking you, how did it all begin for you? How did you start playing the organ? I know there's a story behind this. We'd love to hear it.
Well, I first played the piano when I was 7, and I turned to the organ at 12, still continuing to play the piano, of course. Just because I have two brothers who are older than me, and the oldest brother had a friend who got married, and I had a small electronic organ at home, 3 octaves, and he told me, so bring your electronic organ and you will play for my wedding. And I said, oh no, if there's an organ in the church, I will play the organ of the church. I didn't know anything about the organ. And when I arrived, it was very funny because I did not imagine that it would be so big, 3 manuals, buttons everywhere. I didn't know what were those buttons for. And so I just used the name that I knew. So trompette, I knew, okay. Flute, I know that. Preston, I don't know what it is, so I don't use it. So it was like that. It was quite funny. And then during the Mass, I don't know why, but well, especially at that time, I was just playing, like a game with the buttons just under the first manual. There were what I think it was some kind of presets. So from pianissimo, piano, mezzo forte, forte, fortissimo. And when I pushed the fortissimo, just at that moment, I don't know why, I just fell down on the first manual, which made an incredible noise in the church, and a friend of the bridal just collapsed. So that was my first experience with the organ.
So the moral of that story is don't let your 12-year-old brother be in charge of the music at your wedding. Is that right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Now, I saw a picture of you in your book, which Randy Atchison was kind enough to lend me, of you playing in the keyboard in a band called Divrouet, rehearsing some Breton folk music.
Yes.
So have you been taken by other genres of music as well in your lifetime?
Not really. Well, like any teenager, I was listening for something else. But I was not really interesting. I really preferred the classical music from the beginning. So.
Good. Now, you became the titular organist at Notre Dame when you were 23 years old.
Yes.
How did that occur, and what impact did that have on you? You wrote in your book that you received many requests for interviews, and for the first time in your life, you experienced sheer malice. and resentment.
Experience what?
Sure, malice. That's how they raisonnement. Raisonnement. So some of the, according to this, it said some of the press had no mercy on you, and people were jealous
Oh, yes.
because of your abilities.
It's Halloween
me.
already, or what?
So they just are playing around with mics. Excuse me, Jack and George. Okay, they're demons in the system. They're preparing themselves for Halloween. So anyway, just tell us, what was that like at 23 to get this incredible honor?
Well, I was not expecting to be organist at Notre Dame. When Cochereau died in 1984, there were two main organs in Paris which were without organists because Jean-Jacques Grunenwald in Saint-Sulpice died in 1982. And the Archbishop of Paris at that time decided to create some rules to name organists in the churches in Paris, in the Diocese of Paris. And so there was a competition for that, and we would be put on the list to be organist somewhere. And this is what I was expecting. I was thinking that maybe one of the organists in Paris, like La Madeleine, the big churches, would move from their churches to Notre Dame, and then I would be organist at the second church. It's not a second church, but not so important than Notre Dame. And I was chosen for the competition of Notre Dame, especially, which I passed really without any. I was not anxious at all because I thought it wouldn't work. And so I just played. And then the problems came the next day when I was appointed. Because it's always difficult being, just on the spot, on stage like this, under the lights. And it was really difficult for 2 years. And I read something from the Pope, Jean-Paul II, who said, it took me 1 year to wear the clothes of the Pope. I think it's the same by being organist at Notre Dame. So it takes time. And I was not prepared for that. So.
There's an expression I heard you use in an interview, c'est porter la robe, le costume.
Oui, c'est ça.
Yeah. To carry this mantle, so to speak.
Yes, right.
So what is the role for a titular organist at Notre Dame? What does it involve? What did you find over those first 2 or 3 years that it really meant to others that you had to take on and wear?
First, I remember the first mass that I played. And I had the feeling that all my predecessors were just looking at me, just behind me, and they said, "Be careful." So it was quite difficult, and also because I was organized at Notre Dame, many people came to the concert that I played at that time, and I was not used to see so many people for the concerts, and I didn't play differently than the previous day, but well, I was organist at Notre Dame, and that changed a lot of things. And also, people were very jealous. First, because Pierre Cochereau died too early; he was even not 60, and it was a shock for everybody, and especially for all people who loved him. And being organist at Notre Dame after Pierre Cochereau meant that we just killed Pierre Cochereau a second time. So that was very difficult.
Could you tell us a little bit about your studies, what you studied, and what subjects to prepare you to become a great organist?
Well, I grew up at a time where it was not necessary to have a master, doctorate, or that kind of thing. So I just went to the conservatoire in suburb of Paris, Saint-Maur-des-Fossés, where I was a student of Gaston Littez. And I stayed with him for 4 years, and I played lots of repertoire. It was I had time to practice because I didn't have anything else to do than practice the organ and also harmony and kind of analyze a bit. And that's it. So 5 hours, at least 5 hours organ every day, 3 hours of piano and 2 hours of harmony. And then on the evening, well, just to change my mind, I listen a little bit of music.
Beatles? The Beatles?
No. I didn't like the Beatles that much.
Who did you listen to in the evening?
Sorry?
Who did you listen to, or what kind of music in the evening?
Oh, Messiaen, Ravel, Chopin.
Like all of us, back when we were young. Last night, by the way, I was told you were here until 1 a.m.
Yes.
Just practicing and getting the sound just right.
Yes, all right.
Extraordinary. The kind of dedication it takes to prepare to do what you've done.
Yeah, it's very important. So thank you, Randy, for bringing me back to the hotel afterwards. Yes, it takes a lot of time to prepare and to get used to an instrument. And I would say especially here. The instrument is not very easy to play because it's easy to play but not to hear, at least for the console, which is the worst place to listen to the instrument. So thank God there is a system, a replay system, so I could just make a short excerpt of the pieces and then go in the nave and listen and correct things. So I think I ran many miles yesterday evening. Well, it was good for the heels. But yes, it was an interesting way to work because it's not very often that we had that system. And I experimented that in Germany, in the cathedral in Mayence. And it's also very nice just to hear what happens. But here, because the organ is so spread out, it's very interesting to use one part, the other part, or just making the sound just going from one side to the other, and then it's very nice. So I hope you will enjoy it.
Oh, I'm sure we will. I watched Olivier for 45 minutes go to the console, record something, come out, and use a remote control to play it again. He came down to about the 9th or 10th pew. And I was exhausted after 45 minutes. I mean, it was like watching a combination of fine music performance and aerobics. And what makes the organ at Notre Dame so special? I believe you have 8,000 pipes. How does this differ from playing other cathedrals and churches and concert halls around the world?
Because this is Notre Dame. No, not only. The organ is also very nice. It's an incredible instrument. We still have some pipes from the Middle Age, not very much, just 9. But it's quite something. I just saw them once because they are hidden at the back of the organ, and it's so amazing, really. You know, when you see an old person, I would say after 100 years. And you see on the skin some, les taches, I don't know how to say that. Yeah, thank you. And then the pipes were like that, the pipes were, 600 years old, and they were like that. And then the organ has been restored every 30 years since the beginning of the 17th century. Each time it has been enlarged, but the organ builder always kept the soul of the previous organ builders. So, which means it's not an organ which has changed all the time only, but the organ always it's some kind of steps on the organ, and we can still hear the organ from the 18th century, for example, and play with the same stops from the 18th century. And so then Cavaillé-Coll restored the organ in the 19th century and made something very special, stop that we never heard before, except Notre Dame, and still now. And then the organ was still restored on the 20th century and 21st century. So it's always, the story is not finished.
The pipes that Olivier was referring to were in the organ that was built and placed in the cathedral in 1402. Isn't that extraordinary? And some of these pipes are still being used. I think you've noted that there's always been an organ at the cathedral,
yes.
Going back to the 1100s when it was first the cathedral was first constructed. Is that correct?
Yes, but the organ, of course, in that case was not were not attached to the wall, hang to the whole wall when they are now. They were small organs, positif, what we call positif, that we could move and use wherever you wanted to play or to have the mass. You know, when the cathedral was in construction, then we never know from one month to the next month where you will have the service and masses and everything. I would say it's a bit like this now, because the cathedral is restored, but not totally. And for example, to go to the organ, we have several access, and we never know before arriving. So oh no, today it doesn't work here. We have to go to another place, because it's still work in progress.
Wow, that will keep you on your toes.
Yes.
One of our musicians wanted to know, Johnny Vaughn wanted to know, have you ever played or directed choirs? Have you ever directed choirs?
No, never.
No.
No.
Okay. So that's always kept very separate.
Yes.
Is there a choir at Notre Dame?
Yes, a very good choir.
Very good.
And but it's happening at front. You know, we're just at the back. So it's now it's too far away. There's 100 meters, and it just doesn't work. Except for some pieces like Vienne, the Vienne that you heard this morning, but with two organs, and so otherwise it's very difficult to play together.
And Notre Dame receives 13 million visitors a year.
Yeah,
that's phenomenal.
Approximately,
which I'm told makes it difficult to rehearse. So therefore, I'm told you have to rehearse late at night.
Yes.
So how late do you start rehearsal, and how late might you be playing on the organ on the usual night?
For the rehearsals, there's always something happening in the cathedral. You should know that. So it's very difficult to start before 10 o'clock at night. And just before coming to the United States, I spent part of the night at the organ. And when I left at 3:30 or so, there were still people working in the cathedral on the lights and something. There's always something happening at Notre Dame, always, day and night.
It's starting to sound more like Christ Church.
Yeah, for example, last night there was an organist playing until very late.
Yeah. I tried to get him to move out at 10, but he refused. I'm told that Notre Dame is one of the few churches or cathedrals in all of France that's heated, which makes that very important, because if you're going to be rehearsing till very late, at least you have a warm cathedral in which to do it. Is that right?
Yes, right. Too warm.
Too warm.
Yes, too warm. It's almost inconvenient, you know, when you have to remove the clothes, because it's I think it's too much. Yeah. Like the light, it's too much. I think since the restoration, what I like at Notre Dame is when they just turn the light off, and then we just discover the cathedral like it should be. Otherwise it looks like a TV show, and it's
Yeah, I was somewhat horrified when I saw the restoration on TV. I get French TV, and because they were shining lights on everything, and it looked so bright. But when I got in there to worship in May and June, I went to worship 6 or 7 times, and then went to an organ concert with one of your predecessors. I felt like it wasn't too bright, and it was right, but for you, it's different.
Yes, it's still too bright. I think it's a problem to see the vault so much. Right. It is something that we should just discover, imagine, not just see. And this is one of the biggest problem for me. It's like we want to reach God. We don't want. Do we want to see God? So we see the vault, and it is, for me, that kind of meaning. So this is the first thing. The second thing is also about the reflections of the light throughout the windows, and it does not create the same effect when the church is too bright. Then the sun has some problems to reach the walls and to give all of those colors. And but well, that's it.
Which is one of the great gifts of Gothic architecture, the whole, let's see, the Victorines with the sensibility of light and illumination and the idea that there was a theology and a spirituality about how the sun would move throughout the day and light the interior of the cathedral and create different feelings and sensibilities based on the light.
And you cannot imagine, for example, when I go to practice on the evening, it is the time where the sun goes through the rose window, which is above the organ. And within 3 hours, we can see the light just going just like this in the chancel and just go on exactly on the cross and then turn to go for the night. And it's just magic. So this is one thing, but it's not the only one. For example, you know, in France, most of the organs are located always under a rose window. So when it is like at Notre Dame on the west side, so you have a lot of sun, especially in the afternoon. And I always thought about that when people, you know, at the 17th or 18th century didn't know so much about music. They didn't turn the television or the radio to hear music. And so they went to the church. Then they saw the procession. At that time, the organ didn't play for the procession. The first time was for the Kyrie, first Kyrie. And with what we call the plenum, le plein jeu, which is, you know, full of pipes and etc. And very lightning sound. And then the idea is when you hear something like this, it's when you hear noise somewhere, you will just, of course, turn to the direction of the noise, and then you turn to the organ, and you cannot see the organ because it is hidden by this rose window and the sun coming from the rose window. So which means that you have some kind of illumination by the sound combined with the illumination of what you are seeing. And for me, it is a very strong symbol to have that double illumination.
So you write in your book that the cathedral is a place that represents the whole nation. Important services such as the national ceremony after the terrorist attack at the Bataclan, as well as national celebrations are held there. What is it like to serve an institution in a sacred place that embodies the nation?
I'm sorry, I did not.
That embodies the nation. What is it like to serve an institution and a sacred place that embodies the nation?
Well,
toute la France.
It means sometimes playing for some causes or for some people that we don't want to play for, but well.
Frey, say more.
But it's also nice to have the opportunity to play for. Opportunity is not the right word. In such circumstances like the terrorist attacks, for example. And that was, in that case, we really feel this role of, you know, just making everybody thinking together and being just being together. But you know, I felt that down. Not only that, also not only in Notre Dame, but I remember in October 2001. I was asked to play a concert in New York for the families of the victims of the firemen, and then of course I agreed to come, and we had a concert in St. Ignatius Loyola with the Requiem by Mozart. I played half of the concert, and then afterwards I improvised, and at the end of the improvise, everybody sang the Saint-Aignan chorale. And with the orchestra, with the organ, everybody together, and that was, you know, so incredible.
You've had the experience to work with and serve alongside some of the great spiritual leaders of France. Cardinal Jean-Marie Lustiger, who you said he never celebrated the Eucharist without a tear coming down his
Yeah,
cheek.
right.
And then Monsignor Patrick Chauvet, who I picked up his memoir when I was in Paris this summer and began reading that. These were people who you worked with who deeply touched you spiritually. You loved Lustiger's sermons and then the sync sermons, I guess, of Patrick Chauvet.
Yeah.
Can you tell us a little bit about that relationship between those who preached and those who play music?
Yeah. First, being an organist means work most of the time with telepathy, because we are far away, and the only way to reach people is, through les ondes. I don't know how to say that, but like the radio, les ondes. Thank you. And it is something which is very important, and sometimes, not always, unfortunately, but sometimes we just feel this connection between everybody, and when we have this connection, that it goes somewhere else, and it's really incredible. But it just comes from in both ways. I remember just listening to a sermon by the Cardinal Lustiger, and at the end I say, okay, so for the offertory I will just play this and this and this in relation to what he said. And then finally, just before the offertoire, he will say a small thing, and he said, doesn't work anymore, so I have to change and make it up. And but it's very important. And on the other way also, for example, I remember once I made a big improvisation on the Nun kommt der Heiland for Advent time, and for the prelude of the Mass. And then when he arrived to speak, he just spoke first about the improvisation that he heard. And so this dialogue, permanent dialogue, is very important. And some of the priests, even now at Notre Dame, always try to deal. So what will improvise on? But if there is, for example, a verse, or during the Vespers, there is a text of the refrain, and then I will improvise on that, on special word, and then they are listening and say, oh, you improvised on this and this and this. So they are listening, which is good.
And that's such a big part of the French organ tradition, isn't it? Improvisation.
Yes.
And you will conclude your concert this afternoon or with an improvisation. How does that work? I know you're going to be given, there are 3 different themes. You'll be given one to work with, and you have just a couple minutes to kind of think how you will express that with music. How has that become such a huge part of the French organ tradition?
Maybe because organists are lazy. And then they don't have to practice that much, they just improvise and that's it. So it's partly true. Not only, I think it's, for example, at Notre Dame, there are so many masses that it's not possible to take too much time. So we cannot make the priest waiting for the end of a piece or something like this. Or if it's too short, what shall we do? So the best in that case is really just to play and improvise and look at the TV that we have at the organ loft to see where they are and how long it will take, and trying to build a piece which will sound written, which is the most difficult thing. When we had the competition in 1985, we had to improvise 15 minutes. There was a chronometer on the organ loft. And after 15 minutes, we had to stop. And this is really what happens at Notre Dame, even now. For example, on the organ console, there are 3 lights. So green light to start to improvise, orange light to start to stop, and the red light to stop, like in the street.
Now you're going to give some great ideas for those when we're doing sermons here. Green light, orange light, red light, the pulpit drops down.
But there is a place in the cathedral in Chartres for a while. The priest asked the organist, because the organ is hanged on the south wall, and the priest asked the organist after, I think, 7 minutes, just to play the lowest pipe of the 32 foot. Just only the priest would hear it, and he said, "Oh, it's time to land now."
Interesting. There we go. Food for thought. About 13 years ago, we did a capital campaign, just before I arrived, to restore the whole interior of our church. It was beautifully done. George Beldshaw, who's now our director of engagement and oversees our development, helped lead that. And the chancel now is stunning. We're embarking on another capital campaign to restore our buildings. You wrote in your book, hearing the congregation's repeated response to the cantor's invocation, "Priez pour nous," pray for us, in the cathedral acoustics from the organ gallery, especially literally gives you the impression the stones themselves are singing. What is it about these grand buildings, these sacred spaces, that begs that they be restored, conserved for the centuries, to touch countless people?
Yeah, I must confess that I do not find the same atmosphere right now at Notre Dame that I used to experiment before the fire. So I don't know if all the prayers of the people since centuries were, hanged on the walls. I don't know, but there was really something special in the place. And it was really incredible because, for example, I went to practice at night, and I was, after a day of teaching at the Conservatoire, and I was exhausted, and just being at Notre Dame, looking at the nave, it seemed that the whole energy of the church just goes just like this, and then you can practice for 5 more hours without any problem. So for sure there is something, and maybe not that much now, but we have to rebuild now. So now the building is rebuilt. Now we have to rebuild the soul of the building.
So let's talk about the fire. It took place on April 15th, 2019. Mm-hmm. Whereas the fire that consumed Chartres in the Middle Ages burned for 3 days. This burned for 7 hours, but nearly destroyed the entire cathedral. Mm-hmm. Where were you when you first heard this, and what was your immediate reaction?
I was in Vienna. And we just arrived here with my wife because I was supposed to play 2 concerts with the brass ensemble of the Wiener Philharmoniker, make a recording. And then we just put our luggage in the hotel room, and I received a SMS from a friend who lives in the Panthéon, which is the hill in Paris. And he had a direct view of Notre Dame, and he told me, "Olivier, it's horrible. Notre Dame is on fire," and with a picture, and then another picture 5 minutes later where the fire had increased. So I was really shocked. Of course, we turned the TV, and it was already on TV. And it was even a bigger shock because the previous day I was playing there for the Palm Sunday, and just discovered this was just because I think it's. We know that it's the way of life. We know that our parents will die one day, and we are never prepared to that, but we know it will happen. So this is a normal thing, normal. But we never thought, we could not even imagine that a building which is more than 850 years could just disappear in one night. And that was, it's... it was really a nightmare. So we spent the night just speaking to the colleagues, the friends, and see what happened, etc. And then the next morning, the manager of Notre Dame went to the organ. I was on the phone with him, just like this, and he told me, "Well, everything seems normal. There's a bit of water just on the organ loft, but everything seems normal." And so he went into the organ. He said, "Everything is fine." It was really miracle. But you know, I'm sorry, um, in this fire, most of the liturgical elements of the cathedral were saved. So the cross, the statue and the altar, main altar, the rose windows, the statue of the Virgin, which is just on the middle of the of the cathedral, in the transept, just where the spire fell down, still there. And even more, after some days, with all of the water, there were still some candles burning in front of the Virgin Mary, of the statue. The stalls in the choir, the organ, all of that was saved. So I think it's a miracle.
It's incredible. So the roof was made of lead, right? And then that melted in the flames. And so I was told there was toxic dust throughout the cathedral, and it became a toxic kind of site where you had to have hazmat suits to go in. How did this impact the organ? It had to be removed, right, and sent to 7 different workshops to be restored?
Yes, exactly, because there was a lot of dust in the organ, and like everywhere in the cathedral, and also this lead dust, so which was, of course, problematic and very dangerous for people. So we had to remove everything, so the organ was taken out, except the big pipes and the facade, which was not possible to move, and was restored just on site. Otherwise, everything went in several factories of organ builders, and they all, cleaned all the pipes, metal pipes. They painted the wooden pipes because it's not possible to remove the lead from the wood. And so they made an incredible work for 4 years.
What was lost in the fire? Were some relics lost, stained glass windows? I know when I went in, I was surprised at how Spartan the chapels are now. Mm-hmm. And they have some modern contemporary pieces of art, say the huge macrame designs or paintings, where they used to be dark and have 18th, 19th century paintings. What was lost?
The altar, which was on the center of the cathedral, and the choir organ was totally destroyed. Otherwise, no, the rest is still there.
Now, this captivated the whole world.
I'm sorry, there's something I would forget. I'm sorry to interrupt you, but a story with the, that Notre Dame is the place where we have the crown of the Christ. And that was in the cathedral. And the manager of Notre Dame was not in Paris where the fire happened. He was in Versailles. Time to come back. He was, and he arrived, and people, the policeman didn't want him to go in the cathedral. He said, I need to go. I need to save the crown. And he was the only one to have the code, just of the safe where the crown was. And so he went into the cathedral. And then, when he arrived just in front of the safe, he forgot the code, just because of the he was so anxious, and so he had to call someone who knew one number, and then he just couldn't. It was finally he saved the crown.
Wow, what a story!
Oh, I have to tell you one more story. I'm sorry. So we have time until 5 o'clock, so it's no problem. Then it was. We had to spend 10 days in Vienna, and it was almost impossible for us not to come back to Paris. So we rearranged the recording and the rehearsals to save one day, and on Easter Day, my wife and I just flew to Paris for the day just to see the cathedral. And we were, of course, very anxious to what we would see, because the cathedral was so, we saw the images on TV. And then when we turned around, we didn't want to, we stayed there, and finally we turned around. And then we saw the cathedral. That was spring, a very sunny day. And what we just saw was the two towers, of course not the spire, which was not there, but the two towers, which were absolutely white, of course with all of the water that they received, they were white. And with the sun, it was even more white. And on the side, there was a big tree that was spring, so with leaves and flowers. And this tree just hid everything from the damage of the cathedral. So what we saw is not blessed, no, not blessed, sorry, injured cathedral, but just a cathedral with those two towers, just very, very like this, so very strong. A bit like the cathedral was saying to us, don't worry, I will still be here in 1,000 years.
It reminds me of seeing the Santa Camisa in Chartres this summer. I went down to spend 3 days there, and they had it survived the Great Fire of Chartres that lasted 3 days. They had taken it down. 3 monks took it down to an underground chamber, and the whole cathedral was rubble. On the 3rd day, they came out when the fire had stopped and brought the Santa Camisa with this garment that it is believed that the Virgin Mary wore at the time of the Annunciation, and then, well, giving birth to Jesus, which would have been the first fabric that he ever touched. So in what sense now has music, sacred music and the cathedral become an even greater sign of the resurrection after this fire and everything it stood?
I'm not sure that I understand.
Well, it sounds like this whole fire has just taken the symbolism of Notre Dame to this whole different level of resurrection. And, you know, as you say, the tree in bloom.
Yeah.
Has it affected the way you see music there or others?
Not really, I must say. I'm sorry.
Okay. So your concert this evening is a repertoire of French music with selections by Johann Sebastian Bach, with translations by César Franck and Alexandre Guimond, Gabriel Piernet, Charles Marie Vidor, and Maurice Durflay.
Yeah, they were all organists, not Bach, but they were all organists in France, in Paris. And the 2 pieces by Bach that we'll play were transcribed by Olivier and Marcel Dupré. So they were all organists in Paris. So this is the link between all of those pieces. Yeah.
So when I was, let's see, after college, I went over to Paris, and I was living on the equivalent of $3 a day. And so I didn't have much entertainment expenses, but I would go to the great organ concerts at Les Invalides, Notre Dame, Le Madeleine, and they were free by and large, and you'd hear these incredible concerts. What is most special about French organ music that makes it so world famous?
I think it's very enjoyable to listen, to play and to listen. There's a lot of colors, and I think it just goes directly to the soul and the heart of the people who listen to it. Just let me compare this with German music. It's not a question to say which one is better, but it's so different. And there is a book which was written by Madame de Staël, who was a French writer in 19th century. And she compared already the German spirit and the French spirit, saying that the German are more, on the intellectual way. they are very happy to when they can, you know, see how it's so well done, etc. For example, all the fugues that you have in the music in German music, but not only all the philosophe that you have in Germany that we don't have in France, not in that way. And then in France, it goes more in the heart. No matter if it's well done or not well done, it just goes there, and it is a big difference, really. The difference between the sensitive way of playing music or the intellectual way of playing music, and composing music also. So this is what makes the difference for French music, I think.
Yeah, you had a beautiful quote.
Sorry.
Go ahead. No, go ahead.
I'm sorry. And this is also why we improvise, because you go directly also to this kind of sensitive thing.
You had a wonderful quote from Madame de Staël in your book. It said, "By learning the prosody of a language, one enters into the mind of the nation that speaks it more intimately than through any other kind of study whatsoever." And then you added, "You can't grasp the subtleties and ultimately the spirit of French music if you don't understand its language or if you don't speak it. I urge all my students to speak French."
Of course.
That's
of
great.
Course. Yeah, it's very important.
That's great.
Really. And so it's not just speaking a little bit. I think it's important really to understand the second degree. So when we say something and then we mean something else. Because a little bit like the diplomat people, they all do that, you know. They say maybe, which means no. When they say yes, they say maybe. So it's and then if they say no, they are not diplomat. So I think the same for playing music. We have this second degree, and I think it's very important really to try to see what is hidden behind the notes on a score. And it reminds me something which was said by a French conductor, Michel Plasson, who said, if you play badly a piece by Wagner, for example, it's not a problem. It will stay Wagner because the music is there. You know, if you play badly a piece by Pierre Ney or Roussel or all of those French composers, then everything is gone. Because this is some kind of a balance between everything, which is so important that if you just go too much in one way or another way, then the music is not existing anymore. So this is really what I wanted my students to understand by the fact to speak French, because it is exactly the same way of thinking by speaking or by composing and playing.
Marvelous. We can't wait to hear your concert tonight at 5 o'clock. Thank you for being so generous with your time to give us some insights into your role in your world. And we know you need to get up and practice. So God bless you. Thank you all for coming out. We'll see you all back at 5 o'clock if you can join us.